For more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, it's nice to have you around. Now, how close are we to this proposed 60-day ceasefire in Gaza?
Well, the thing we have to remember is just because President Trump posts something on Truth Social doesn't make it fact, doesn't make it concrete, and doesn't give us any depth into what the discussions have been between Israel and Hamas over the past 24 hours. Of course, everybody would love a 60-day ceasefire that would lead to an end to the war, but I think what we can glean from President Trump posting that, as well as him having Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu coming to the White House on July the 7th, which is next week, Monday, is that ceasefire talks are gathering pace and that perhaps Hamas and Israel are close to coming to a deal. I think at the moment, all eyes are on that meeting with Netanyahu and Trump next week, and to see what concessions, if any, the Israelis are prepared to make that will lead to Hamas accepting a ceasefire deal.
Well, Hamas is yet to respond, but then why would Israel want a 60-day ceasefire, probably not a permanent one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Now, that is because of domestic politics. Benjamin Netanyahu knows that certain right-wingers in his party want the war to continue, and he wants to stay in power. If those right-wingers decide that he isn't the best person for the job and isn't going to continue the war, then they will collapse his government, and that's not what he wants. He wants to stay in power for as long as possible. The right-wingers in his government are hungry for the war and hungry for the war to continue, and so that's why at the moment he is talking about a ceasefire and not a permanent end to the war in Gaza, and therefore will agree possibly to only 60 days. But also, you have a situation where President Trump has called for Netanyahu's corruption trial to be scrapped. You know, he's going to be on trial for corruption, and without the prospect of that, without the prospect of potentially going to jail, then Netanyahu will be more willing to end the war, safe in the knowledge that the focus will not shift immediately to his own political and legal vulnerability. So at the moment, while this potential trial for corruption is going on, and while he has this government in place that is hungry for war, he is staying hungry for war himself. Therefore, we're talking about a ceasefire as opposed to a complete end to this terrible war.
Okay, so while all these are going on, tell us about the situation in Gaza right now.
Well, on the ground in Gaza, it is as grim as it's ever been. Whilst our attention was on Israel and Iran, Gaza was still being bombed daily. Civilians were still being shot while queuing up for food. 20 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit a popular seafront cafe that was frequented by locals, by journalists in Gaza City on Monday, and other regions in Gaza City have also been leveled pretty much by Israeli bombs over the past few days. So the explosions have never stopped. The killing of Palestinians queuing up for food has never stopped and continues whilst we're talking about potential ceasefires and trying to end this war.
All right. Thank you so much, Afia Hagen, for sharing these updates with us.